Thank you for joining. This is C.Z.Richie reading The Fledgling of Frostholm by C.Z.Richie. Chapter 9. As Bad as Heartbreak Gets. Alaria. It was official. Alaria had little to no efficiency with all of the magical schools. After all that practice, the issue wasn't her mana pool, it was how effectively her body utilized the mana she had. It was equal parts amusing and disappointing to Alaria because of the name Zenithor chose for the body he created. It had an emotional connection to an old friend, but was also the perfect name for a great aeromancer. The trinket showed that she wasn't going to be a great aeromancer. The opposite was true. Alaria would have to invest 20 times more mana into an air spell to get the same effect Zenithor had. Alaria was going to be a poor geomancer and a terrible aeromancer. Zenithor had known how to cast spells using the 5 other elements, but the base for magic his entire life as a sorcerer had been air. Alaria would have to completely relearn magic from this element's new perspective, and would still be inefficient with her mana. Alaria wasn't devastated. Far from it. This challenge was exciting and welcome. On top of that, Alaria realized this was the most significant thaumaturgical finding since Zenithor published his findings on manufactured intelligence and enchanting decades ago. Alaria had conclusive evidence that the soul in mind did not determine mana efficiency. The arcane discrepancies between Alaria and Zenithor could fill multiple tomes, but Alaria would not be sidetracked from her primary task. At the end of the class, Alaria stayed behind for her meeting with Neil. Marin stayed behind for a second to thank Neil for the lesson and let Alaria know she'd visit the infirmary. Once it was just Neil and Alaria, Neil picked a chair and sat beside his student. Neil looked concerned, as if he was about to start his lecture with, "I'm not upset with you." Instead, Neil said, "Alaria, you have almost 0 magical talent. How did it even manifest?" Alaria told a half-truth. "When I was younger, I tried to steal some bread from a bakery. I got so nervous that the bread exploded in my hands from chaotic wind energy." Neil studied Alaria, looking for the truth below the wide brim of her hat. "Who was your tutor? Who approved your recommendation for Spire?" Alaria responded again without the spirit of truth. "Zenithor Whisperwind of Frostholm wrote my recommendation." "Zenithor? He's still alive? I see it now. The hat." Neil laughed while tracing an imaginary brim in front of his head. "Zenithor died 4 days ago," Alaria said, trying to imbue her voice with a calm sadness. "He wanted to give me some of his legacy, but had grown too old to see it through." Neil shook his head empathetically. "That is a shame. Zenithor was one of the greats, but he hasn't published anything since I was a boy. I am surprised he took an apprentice so late in life," Neil responded. Alaria had slowly felt these fake emotions turn real in her stomach. Alaria felt her heart grow heavy, and didn't know if this was because of the conversation, reflecting on Zenithor's life, or an anomaly caused by inhabiting the new body. "I think he became more sentimental in his older years." "Dean Flamescale likely wouldn't have taken you in had he known you had no talent, Alaria. With what we see in that cube, I don't think you have a future here at Spire," Neil explained to the emotional student in front of him. "No, I do have a future here, Neil. I proved it already with my fight with Flare," Alaria said. "Your fight with Flare proved you have spirit, and can cast 1 cantrip. However, the students below you will learn your limitations and climb past you to secure their own safety. I don't want you to end up hurt. What would Zenithor say about where you're at?" Neil said. "He would tell me to get off my ass and figure out how to break each and every person that tried," Alaria responded, smiling at the level of honesty in her words. Zenithor was still in her. His passion burned deep inside her like an undying furnace. Neil laughed heartily. Fine, but you have to prove to me that there is something worth teaching here. I want you to put everything into the casting of one spell. Impress me, and this won't become a factor in my judgments of you going forward. Alaria thought to herself for a moment. According to the cube, her best element was earth. It's almost twice as efficient as air. Alaria debated pushing everything she had into a wind cantrip, but the great sorcerer Zenithor wouldn't settle for anything less than the flashiest of examples. Alaria decided on a course of action and stepped onto the table. Exertion was necessary for a great exhalation of mana. Alaria would have to perform a feat of physical prowess to empty her reserves and cast with an element that was not habitual. Neil watched on. Alaria could tell he was taking this moment seriously. Alaria sprinted the length of the table toward the center of the room. There was a fountain between this desk and another desk on the far side of the room. When Alaria ran the length of the desk, she leapt into the air. As she jumped, she cast an earth cantrip with everything her mind and body could give. A massive wedge of stone erupted from the floor under the fountain, cleaving it in half and sending water flying. Alaria twirled through the air, firmly setting a hand on the tip of the wedge of stone before pushing off of it and safely landing on her feet atop the table on the other side. Neil looked at the giant axe head of stone Alaria had pulled from the floor of his classroom. Alaria read awe on his face. A student with 0 efficiencies should have been almost useless magically. However, Alaria's lithe performance was commendable, and if any student underestimated her, they would surely leave the arena with a loss. Alaria climbed down off the desk. Exhausted, she breathed heavily. She couldn't help but smirk. Factor that into your evaluations, whelp, she thought. Marin. During lunch, Marin ate with some of her new friends from Neil's class, Callow, Sin, and Benji. It was one of the most ordinary moments of her life since she arrived at Spire. It felt like she was back home with her brothers and sister. Sin and Marin bonded over their holy symbols to the god of the sun. Marin learned that the blonde woman with the muscular build wanted more than anything to become a paladin of Phoenix, and always had a beautiful ruby and gold necklace around her neck, stylized as the Phoenix. When Marin produced her twined loaf of bread, she was prepared for Sin to make fun of her. However, when Sin inspected it, she first said, "Your ma or pa really made this for you?" "My mother." "That's so cool. Ain't no way we could have made mine." She hooked a thumb under her amulet's chain to draw attention to it. "My ma had it commissioned by the Crafting Guild in Firelight so that I could use it as my focus. Maybe if you'd some topaz, you could fit that in and use this for your focus," Sin said, a tinge of excitement in her voice. Callow swallowed a bite of celery to chime in. "Don't use topaz. You want to use something with a bit more flash and arcane acuity, like amethyst or sapphire." Sin looked insulted at his response. Who'd ever heard of purple or blue bread? Bread is golden brown. Or it is an insult to his radiance, Sin responded. Also, amethyst ain't more flashy than topaz. "Purple is my favorite color," Callow responded sheepishly. Benji chimed in here. His voice sounded practiced, as if he strained slightly to maintain accentless common speech. "Your Phoenix is a knight of common birth. I find it unlikely that he would be insulted. I think he would be charmed at the novelty." Sin thought briefly. "Maybe I'm overthinking it then, but my family always strove to prove ourselves to him. When I think of the paladins of the Father, my mind goes to the Dean." "Wait, Benji, is that insensitive?" Sin looked worried momentarily, hoping not to insult her new friend. "No, of course not," Benji said with a smile. Marin needed clarification at this exchange. "Why would Benji be insulted by you talking about Dean Flamescale?" Callow answered. "Benji is a ward from Arcane, one of the many brought here after the war with Arcane. Dean Flamescale was part of a decisive push to end that war. Some Arcanists believe him to be a war criminal." Benji expanded on Callow's answer. And still, many arcanists believe Dean Flamescale is a war hero for helping us broker peace. We love our home and our trees, but most arcanists can recognize that charred land yields the most growth. Marin started to think about her life so far from anything else. By the Western Sea, nobody even talked about war with Arcane. She wondered what else she didn't know. Do you have gods in Arcane? Are they the same gods but look different? It would be weird for you to worship some commoner knight born a human. Benji smiled. Yes, of course. High elves like me believe in Zobu. She's the most beautiful person in the world, and is the goddess of nobility and wisdom. Sin chuckled to herself. Benji turned to Sin, and he seemed worried he'd said something wrong. What is it? In the gardens at home, my ma kept statues of all 14 gods and goddesses. Zobu is beautiful, Sin emphasized. You're a lesbian? Kallo asked. Sin giggled like a schoolgirl. If I wasn't before seeing that statue, I was after, I'll tell you what. What's a lesbian? Marin asked, which caused all 3 heads of her schoolmates to snap towards her. The look on their faces was enough for her to break character. She burst into laughter, and all 3 new friends followed suit. Ilaria. Ilaria prepared for the physical activity required for gym class. She changed into her blue tunic and wrapped her chest tightly. Ilaria had the advantage of having a body pre-made to be a heroic sorcerer, except for that pesky lack of mana efficiencies. She also had the benefit of having experienced Hell Week before. As Ilaria effortlessly ran along the newly sculpted track in the gymnasium with 31 other young women, she also practiced spellcasting. She sprinted and alternated between small puffs of frost to cool her warming body and trickles of water to drink. Ilaria only put the bare minimum of mana into these 2 spells, but she found her limit a half hour into the run. The track ran the perimeter of the sizable warehouse-shaped room. In the center of the room were 16 designated spaces for fighting and 1 larger stage for official matches. Of the 32 women running the track, only Terra and Ilaria appeared not to be struggling. Ilaria looked at the woman running in the red vest and wraps. Cryomancers and pyromancers had more control over their body heat, which was evident in Terra's composition. Terra's training started well before she got to Spire. Let this be a lesson, ladies. Bind your chest while you're training. Bind your chest before fighting. Unless the mother sculpted you to be as flat as the lily pads in her garden, save yourself the struggle. I'm going to put you through enough pain as it is, Coach Tilly shouted. In the afternoons, the 4 teachers responsible for the first-year class taught their respective sophomores instead. So the women went to Coach Tilly's loving hands, and the men went to Coach Barry. Tilly was a tyrant. Without warning, she made them start running. They would run for as long as they could for an hour. Then they would do weight training for 30 minutes, acrobatics for 30 minutes, and close out with an hour of sparring. There were 15-minute breaks between each of the blocks. Only 30 minutes into the run, it was clear most women had not expected the intense boot camp. Tilly had black hair, tightly tied up in a braid knotted in on itself many times. The woman had a punchable face, but Ilaria knew anyone who played that game wouldn't walk away from the challenge. Marin, are you hearing me? Because I worry when you stop bouncing, you'll give me a repeat performance of your fight yesterday. As Coach Tilly ran alongside the struggling Marin, she mimed the action of falling over. Yes, ma'am, Marin said. Tomorrow, when you come into class, wear the right clothes, and maybe you won't feel and look like you're dying, Tilly said, commenting on how Marin was wearing the sorcerer robes she had grown attached to over the last 2 days, and not the tunic or vest. Yes, ma'am, Marin shouted. Ilaria, to her credit, had planned to warn Marin about Death Week, but Marin did not return to the dorm room after class. They called it Death Week because by the end of the 4 days of working out, you felt so sore you could die. It was also Death Week because it had the highest dropout rate before first-year finals. The worst thing about Coach Chili was that she knew how to do her job too well. She was like an expert ringmaster. She used her words as a whip to keep the women who were underperforming right at their body's limits, not letting them relax, but knowing just how far to push them while not exhausting them completely. Marin was far from the least fit in the group. There were apprentices in the group who were unwarned of Spire's physical standards, and there were more who knew and thought they could handle it. Many of these apprentices were learning the hard way. They couldn't cut it. At the end of the run, Ilaria sat down to meditate, and Marin collapsed beside her. "How did you do so well?" "Magic," Ilaria replied. Despite her composure, she was out of breath. She knew she'd be doing herself a disservice if she failed to push herself as hard as everyone else. "But the cube, it said you can't do magic," Marin said, struggling to speak past her beating heart and heavy breathing. "I can do magic. I just can't do magic well," Ilaria said. "Are you hoping my handicap will make me drop out so you can have the room to yourself?" "Honestly, the silence might drive me more insane than having a roommate," Marin wheezed. "Can you teach me your secrets? You passed me like a million times. You and that Terra woman are insane." "Teach you my secrets?" Ilaria started. She opened an eye to look at the struggling young woman lying on the stone next to her. "To get started, you have water and frost deficiencies. Learn to get your body temperature under control and keep yourself hydrated." "Yes, ma'am," Marin joked. She tried casting a basic water cantrip on her face, but only half hit her target. The other half flew over her shoulder and hit another woman. Bren squealed when the icy cold water hit her in the back. When she recovered from momentary embarrassment, she shouted, "Who threw that?" Marin shrank as small as possible, but some girls glanced toward Marin nervously. That was all the evidence Bren needed to storm up to the sitting woman. "You think you can just splash people with freezing cold water? This is Spire, not whatever whorehouse your dumb imp ass slid out of to get here," Bren accused. Marin hid her face in embarrassment. I'm sorry. I was just thirsty, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't mean anything by it," Marin confessed. "You can make it up to me by challenging me to a duel. You can be a woman and challenge me now, or I'll break you the second you step foot off campus," Bren threatened. Only the weaker student could challenge the stronger student, and Bren must have known that an unsanctioned fight on campus might get her expelled. "I can't," Marin started. Ilaria heard a new voice come from behind Bren. "If you want to fight, I'm happy to oblige you. Or do you only feel comfortable fighting someone 50 ranks below you?" Sin said. The pyromancer's eyes burned bright, ready to go to blows for her new friend. Sin was the tallest girl in class, and despite only being ranked 27th, she had an imposing figure. The tension in the room loosened at the sound of a real fight challenge. Some of the more prone to shit-stirring classmates let out a small chorus of oohs, some theatrically covering their mouths, eyes darting between the two. "What are you, part orc?" Bren accused. "You look less like a woman and more like the beast that burns a village and takes some poor helpless man to her cave." "Yeah, your daddy," Sin responded. "Fun fact, he was a bitch too." Bren was flabbergasted and clearly about to lose her shit. Luckily, Coach Chili returned to the gym, ready to continue Hell Week. Flair managed to pull the hot-tempered Bren away from Sin. Sin reached down to help Marin to her feet, and the class continued with a grueling hour of weightlifting and stretching. The last and longest stretch of the day was sparring. Roommates fought each other without magic. Teachers learned that roommates typically had a sense of camaraderie at this point, and grudge matches between friends were less common. Of course, this meant that Ilaria would have to spar against Marin. Ilaria took a fighting stance, and Marin raised her hands, mimicking Ilaria's pose. Ilaria had to consider the best method for this stretch of training and decided to loop in her sparring partner. Do you want to be a better fighter? Marin considered the question. I want to be a powerful sorcerer. I've only had to scrap against my little siblings, though. Is fighting that important? A sorcerer can be a genius, talented, and hard-working. Just having one means you fail. You are talented, but you haven't pushed your body to its breaking point, and you haven't grown up with enough money and foresight to be a prodigy, Ilaria answered. So, unless you can punch brains into me, you're going to push my body to its limit? Precisely, Ilaria said. Marin ran at Ilaria and used this moment to raise a leg into a thrusting kick, a kick that Ilaria sidestepped and grabbed. As Marin stood there with one leg caught by Ilaria, she flapped her arms to keep her balance, like an injured bird. She went to pull herself free, but Ilaria had already swept her remaining leg out from under her before she could try. Marin fell to the sparring area mat, and Ilaria offered her a hand. Marin wasn't too proud to take Ilaria's assistance. Marin looked frustrated, but was met only with Ilaria's professional patience. Keep trying. I won't let you strike me, but even when you miss, you will learn something, Ilaria said. Marin closed the distance and threw a flurry of punches, aiming to land a solid strike on Ilaria somewhere, anywhere. However, Ilaria's movements were subtle and graceful. She was redirecting direct hits and shifting out of the way of glancing blows. Eventually, Marin wasn't trying to get a decisive blow, she was just swiping furiously to try to get a hit on her opponent. Marin overextended her reach and saw what was coming too late. Ilaria hit her directly in the nose with a swift elbow strike, hard enough to stun Marin. While looking incredulously at her roommate, Ilaria did not let up. Ilaria struck Marin in the sternum with an open palm strike that floored her again. Ilaria went to help Marin up again. Marin asked, You hit me? I did tell you there would be pain, didn't I? Ilaria asked. She still had no mana, or she would try to stop the bleeding of the young lottery apprentice's nose. Ilaria reached into a small pouch on her waist and offered Marin a cloth patch. Ilaria noticed Marin's resolve when Marin was ready to spar less than a minute later. Marin was highly efficient with water magic, but Ilaria moved with a mystical fluidity as they fought. Marin tried harder not to overextend herself, and Ilaria found fewer openings in Marin's defenses. Around them, the sounds of blows landing and grunts of effort continued. During the fight, Marin noticed fewer women were in the room than had started. Half of the 16 training areas were empty. Where did everyone go? Ilaria stepped back from the fight and responded. Some girls went to the infirmary for injuries. Some went to get rest. But aren't you supposed to stay for the entire class? 4 hours of training can be overwhelming if you don't expect it. I am surprised you haven't given up, given your outfit and how your sparring has gone, Ilaria responded. Because you aren't teaching me pain, you're teaching me self-discipline. You're teaching me to control my emotions in a fight. Ilaria scrunched up her brow. I'm not your master trying to teach you the martial arts secrets. I am fucking exhausted and putting in the bare minimum to stay on my feet. At the end of the class, only 18 girls, including Flair, Bren, Tara, Sin, Marin, and Ilaria, were left. All the women looked spent and drenched in sweat. Some even spent these last moments of class lying down. All of the women, except of course for Tara. Tara sat at the front of the class as calm as when she entered. Good job today, ladies. I'm surprised so few of you are still in class. This must be one of the weaker years. Coach Tilly started. Her muscular build towered over the tired women. Tara spoke calmly. I see what you're doing. It won't work on us this year. Coach Tilly smirked at the student. Oh, did your brother, little Professor Aaron, tell you what to expect? Yes, and I know that you have more bark than bite. You get us to work ourselves tired to trick us into having undeserved authority. You are a coach and not a master, after all, Tara observed with apathetic grace. Coach Tilly laughed. Your brother must love you less than you thought. Any day of the week I can break you, child. Tara went to stand up, ready to back up her words with actions, but Coach Tilly cut her off. How about this? You get some rest, and we can settle this in front of the class tomorrow, whoever's left. If you beat me, I will let you manage your own time and give you the respect you deserve. However, if I win, I get to be the coach for the year, except you all will call me Master Tilly. Tara settled back down. She showed more emotion than she had all day training. To Ilaria, it seemed Tilly's words had affected her. Finally, gym class will be where you act on your challenges for the year. If you want a ranked match, you will do it under my loving and watchful eye. You can challenge one of your higher-ranked classmates once weekly. So if you want a rematch, you better be prepared to wait, Tilly explained. Now go get some rest. You are in for more of the same tomorrow. We'll see, Tara said. That afternoon, Ilaria was recovering in bed from the intense workout. Despite the ability to physically prepare her new body, its muscles still had to fully adjust to this demanding new reality. However, that wasn't what went through Ilaria's mind. Ilaria focused on the limitations of her new body and the ultimate goal of coming to Spire. When Lilium died, Zenithor searched for the answer to his daughter's death by reaching into 5 items that meant the most to her. Each of these 5 items brought faces and emotions to Zenithor. However, his body did not have the correct pattern to read Lilium's experiences thoroughly. Ilaria held one of these 5 items, her fingers tracing over the familiar patterns. It was a simple gold locket with a picture of Lilium's mother. Ilaria wanted more than anything to cast the 2nd-level spell required to experience the events that mattered most to the previous owner. She wanted to understand wholly why Lilium felt the way she did. Why would people like Bren, Flare, and Callow hurt her so much? However, Ilaria didn't have sufficient mana for a level 1 spell, much less level 2. Ilaria's mind buzzed with routes toward the casting of the spell. It was anguishing being this close to the truth, but unable to do anything about it. Marin cut through the fog, saying, Ilaria, are you okay? Marin was on her side, looking across the room at her roommate. You're looking at that locket like it owes you a purse of silver. Ilaria lay on her side. She changed her focus to the lottery apprentice in the other bed. I had someone close to me. I gave them this locket a long time ago, and eventually they had no use for it. You had your heart broken? Marin said. Yes, Ilaria confirmed. Was it bad? It was as bad as heartbreak gets, Ilaria said. She studied Marin's empathetic expression. Ilaria hoped that her roommate never had to experience the mind-shattering heartbreak that accompanies the loss of a child. Ilaria briefly wondered if it was worth telling these half-truths. A part of her wanted to tell her simple roommate and her enthusiastic teacher to fuck off and mind themselves. However, Ilaria knew she was stuck with people like Neil and Marin for the foreseeable future. They didn't deserve the after effects of her mourning. Marin asked, Is it something you want to get off your chest? Ilaria briefly imagined what it would feel like to tell Marin the truth, what caused Zenithor's pain, the societal, ethical, and magical taboos Ilaria demolished, and the bloodthirsty vengeance that corrupted her. No, thank you, Marin. Marin sat up in bed, having had enough time to rest her sore body. Then I will get us something to eat. Something salty for supper and something sweet for dessert. I owe you for helping me with training and your advice about my shark problem." Marin groaned as she pushed under her feet. "Thank you, Marin," Ilaria repeated. Professor Kyra, Rank 1, Terra, 3-0. Rank 3, Gaff, 3-0. Rank 5, Gallier, 2-1. Rank 13, Hitara, 2-0. Rank 15, Emil, 1-1. Rank 24, Leona, 1-0. Rank 28, Fall, 1-1. Rank 32, Kekvi, 1-1. Rank 39, Baracus, 1-1. Rank 41, Lil, 0-1. Rank 42, Mendax, 0-1. Rank 43, Alonza, 0-1. Rank 55, Oda, 0-1. Rank 56, Frobo, 0-1. Rank 60, Rurdo, 0-1. Chapter 10. Something to Prove. Ilaria, Midst Day, Father's 4th. The next day, Ilaria's body had only gotten more sore. The first thing that Ilaria did was walk with Marin to the infirmary. The healers there would still be setting up, and could help with the muscle swelling that caused their post-workout soreness. The lead healer of Spire met their request. The cryomancer was a very sleepy and very old man named Professor Cryonolon. Ilaria thought that the elder mage may have been older than she was. When face to face with Cryonolon, Ilaria second-guessed this decision. The old man didn't say anything to their request. He just sat the two young women down and stared at them like a grizzled old town guard, seated across the table from a pair of petty thieves. "You were not here yesterday," the old mage accused. His voice was soft and scratchy, as if his throat was lined with felt. "No, master. I assumed you'd be too busy with the other students," Ilaria explained respectfully. Cryonolon yawned before returning to his interrogation. "You chose to come to healing before breakfast and not before your gym class." "Right, master. I thought you could help us now since you will not need to cast healing spells for a couple more hours," Ilaria explained. She picked the perfect time so that healers had as few excuses as possible. Cryonolon leaned back. "Your instincts were good to come to me. However, it is a principle of mine this week not to heal growing pains. You freshmen will learn to live with the pain or fail. I'm sorry, honestly. The pain of my students is my pain. Next time your nose breaks, or you are in too much pain to move, my door will be open for you." Marin rebutted. "But what about healing potions? Can we ask other healers?" The octogenarian in the ice-blue robes smiled. "Unless you can learn to heal yourself, or make potions yourself, no. You will struggle to find someone on Spire's staff willing to help you, especially my healers." Ilaria and Marin limped out of the infirmary. There may have been healers in the freshman or sophomore classes who were not bound by the promises made by the healing professor. However, Ilaria and Marin had no leads, leaving the breakfast service aching and sore. Once in Neil's classroom, Neil gave the bad and good news. After the first day, 3 students left the sorcerer's program, lowering their competition but signaling the departure of friends of the students that remained. Everyone in Neil's class from the day before were still there. The lessons for the day were more basic runes. Elemental cantrips could be modified using these basic movement runes. Specifically, they learned the push, pull, left, right, lift, and drop runes. The runes all had somatic components. In practice, the actions looked like a form of sign language. The students learned to cast these spells with the runes for their specific element. The students gifted with more proficiencies had multiplicatively more work for their learning. Paris had to learn 12 new spells, and Marin was tasked with a daunting combination of 24. Ilaria felt sympathy for the overwhelmed lottery apprentice. Ilaria had a different problem. As Zenithor, he had always cast spells starting with the rune for wind. His body instinctually went to cast the wind cantrips, and Ilaria had to unlearn a habit formed over 6 decades. Wind magic wasn't just inefficient for Ilaria, it was the least efficient. Ilaria would get almost 4 times the effectiveness with geomantic spells. This time, during physical education, everyone knew to take it seriously. Over half the students winced and croaked with every movement, and every woman in the class wore the appropriate clothing for the intense physical activity ahead. All the women were seated facing the stage at the center of the room. Standing by the door was an onlooker, a member of the senior class wearing beautiful gray robes. "Tara, I made a promise to you yesterday. Today we'll be fighting to see if you truly deserve the respect you want to command," Tilly said, wearing a black vest. Ilaria knew that this meant that Tilly had earned the title Master Sorcerer. Tara leaned forward, using the slightest amount of momentum to stand, her body portraying none of the pain from yesterday. "I want to be able to cast spells while we fight," Tara stated. "Done. You can cast to your heart's content," Coach Tilly said without hesitation. "Not only that, but I won't have my authority challenged by every stubborn girl in the room. I want the rest of you to stand up too. I'll take you all on now and be done with it." Coach Tilly's demand left no room for negotiation, and all 29 of the remaining women stood in opposition to the authoritarian coach, except for Ilaria. Ilaria calmly walked over to the track and began running laps. She had no interest in getting crushed by a master sorcerer. As Ilaria ran clockwise around the track, she could hear the sounds of the fight starting in her left ear. The acoustics of the gymnasium were fantastic. The louder cries of pain echoed off the far wall, bringing cringe-inducing stereo. Coach initiated and went first for the short woman with the oversized staff. With no effort, Tilly plucked Olivia's staff away and then used it to land a swift blow to her forehead. Olivia went down hard, and Tilly watched as the 5 nearest girls tried to dash at her in response. Tilly moved at almost inhuman speeds. Her skin appeared to lose all hydration, and Tilly was casting numerous spells that nearly all the students present couldn't recognize. Tilly used Olivia's long wooden staff to dispatch 3 more students, including the surprised Marin. The class tried to collapse as a tide every time Tilly moved to a new area, but it wasn't working. Flair was the first one to try voicing a strategy. "Ladies, backs to backs and prepare your spells," Flair shouted as she pushed her back against Bren. However, Tilly was on her in a flash, this time not whacking her with the staff, but using a spell to launch her and Bren up into the air with a pillar of stone. By the time Ilaria finished her first lap, the talented coach had dispatched half the women. Back in Zenithor's day, few positions at Spire commanded as much respect as the drill coach, but times must have changed, and this breaking ritual was added to Hell Week's curriculum to command full respect from the entire Spire staff. It would also help root out weaklings who gave up when confronted with overwhelming odds. Ilaria finished her second lap, and only Tara and Coach Tilly were left standing. To Tara's credit, her stoic expression never wavered, ready for whatever Tilly delivered. Tara smiled as she squared up against Tilly. "You took them down in reverse order of rank. You didn't cast anything more than a cantrip." "Whatever, child. Are you ready for your medicine?" Tilly raised one craggy, dehydrated fist. "I'm going to get what I want out of this," Tara said, standing straight. You aren't going to beat me, Tilly said as she rushed forward, her punch landing squarely on Terra's raised forearm. Terra had blocked the attack of a martial master. From the perspective of the fight, it didn't matter. Even Ilaria could hear the breaking of bones in that forearm. Ilaria took notice. Terra wasn't trying to win. Terra wasn't the prideful idiot she portrayed herself to be yesterday. She was trying to make a point. The only gulf in power, more significant than the one between Terra and Tilly, was the one between Terra and her classmates. With a second blow, this time to the bicep of the same arm, Terra was also brought down. The senior who watched the fight went into action. Ilaria finally recognized her. The electromancer started triaging the injured students and healed them as needed. Since Tilly was a talented fighter, she had gauged almost all of her enemies perfectly to stun or disable with one hit, but she didn't put so much force behind anything as to injure them seriously. While the healing continued, Tilly jogged over to Ilaria, following her along the inner ring of the running track. You must think you are very wise, but running away only makes you a coward. No, master. A wiser woman would have taken that licking to get the healing potion for her sore muscles. We all have something to prove here, Ilaria said. Even Ilaria knew the reason was pride. Ilaria never wanted to be defeated. The perception of perfection would allow her an easier path. She could maintain the delicate balance of undefeatable and unnoticeable. In a typical year, Tilly could break the students and mold them into perfect fighting specimens. Terra and Ilaria both proved in their own ways that they would be tougher to break than any students Tilly had trained over the last decade. Tilly grinned as she sat down and watched the last woman standing run around the track. Marin. The recently healed Marin was a new woman compared to the day before. Her soreness was gone, and she wore the correct clothes for the day's workouts. Sure, she was terrible at binding her chest, and didn't like how the tunic showed off her bare arms, but it was much easier to work out in than the heavy robes she loved so much. As the two women sparred, Ilaria held the advantage in technique, but Marin was refreshed and revitalized. This day, Marin landed more than one blow on the better fighter. You must be tired. You're moving like a zombie, Marin joked. Ilaria laughed at Marin's silly joke, which was surprising as Ilaria seldom laughed at her jokes. She responded, I could still put you in your place if you wanted me to. Maybe you don't have the upper hand today, Marin accused. She went in for a strike, but Ilaria sidestepped her and punched Marin in the gut. Nope. Maybe we go back to our normal dynamic, Marin coughed out. You have a real independent streak growing in you. A part of me expected you to follow me when I went to jog, Ilaria said as they continued to exchange blows. I was just confused, Marin said honestly. One moment I was standing up with the class, and the next, Master Tilly was bonking my off button. Marin pointed to a point on the top of her skull. What a colorful expression, Ilaria observed. Thank you, Marin accepted. She dashed forward, not fully committing and missing her next strikes, and avoiding a return from Ilaria. Say, why didn't you fight? Did you know Master Tilly was strong enough? Anyone employed as a teacher here at Spire is a master sorcerer who graduated from this program. However, that isn't the reason. The truth is that I'm at a disadvantage in fights with my limited magic. I cannot be seen to lose, or I will need to waste my time fighting for my spot against weaklings like Flair or Olivia. Or me? Marin asked, also coming in below Ilaria in the rankings. She knew that if she wanted to, she could challenge Ilaria to a duel. Ilaria smiled at her roommate. Of course not. I already have to waste my time putting you in your place, Ilaria taunted. The taunt didn't work on Marin. On the contrary, Marin considered Ilaria a friend, and as her friend, Marin thought she would try to help Ilaria come out of her shell. How about we talk about something more fun? A group of us are celebrating making it through the first week. We'll visit the falls of Mistfall and enjoy the sight of the lake and stars. Alaria's expression suggested she would politely decline the offer. However, Marin saw her reconsider and respond. I think I'll take you up on that. Who is going? Marin pushed forward for another round of exchanges. With each name, it was growing more evident in her voice how much energy she had spent in the sparring session. The elf? Benji? Marin ducked a blow and swung again, missing. Sin, the one from yesterday. Marin thought she saw an opening and tried to take it. And Callow, the cryomage. At the same time that Marin mentioned a friendly outing with Callow, Alaria had a sudden burst of martial competence. As if in self-defense, while Marin cleared the gap, Alaria struck Marin in the sternum, punching the wind out of the young lottery apprentice. Ah! Marin shouted silently, her body confusing inhaling and exhaling, resulting in neither getting done. Oh, Gust. You okay, Marin? Alaria asked, invoking the domain of wind out of concern. Marin silently nodded. I'm okay. You got me good. Marin lay on her side and took the fetal position to recover for a moment. What do you say, partner? Yeah, all right. I better keep you out of danger, Alaria said. Granite Guardian. Rank 4, Justice, 3-0. Rank 7, Bren, 3-0. Rank 11, Chenu, 2-0. Rank 18, Tai, 1-1. Rank 20, Raz, 2-0. Rank 21, Sefli, 1-1. Rank 22, Fiv, 1-1. Rank 25, Brawl, 1-0. Rank 31, Fasand, 1-1. Rank 34, Kat, 1-1. Rank 36, Drexeros, 0-1. Rank 37, Sanofi, 0-1. Rank 47, Cass, 0-1. Rank 51, Valetha, 0-1. Rank 52, Rini, 0-1. Rank 57, Bylene, 0-1. Thank you for joining. This has been C.Z.Richie, reading The Fledgling of Frostholm by C.Z.Richie. Please feel free to read ahead. The Fledgling of Frostholm is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books to Read, and Apple Books. If you'd like to support me directly, please navigate to my Patreon at patreon.com/CZRichie. Thank you again.